21,000 feet beneath the Philippine Sea, something stared back at the cameras. A number, painted on steel that hadn't seen light since October 1944, 557. For 77 years, the USS Johnston had been sitting in absolute darkness, deeper than the Titanic, deeper than most submarines can safely dive, deeper than anyone thought a ship could survive the fall without being crushed into scrap. And yet there she was. Broken, yes, but present, waiting. When that ROV reached her in 2021, what it recorded brought the battle back to life. The official story had always been there, documented in Navy records and survivor accounts. Heroic destroyer, impossible odds, last stand off Samar. Ship sinks after brutal punishment, but seeing the wreck itself, frozen in time at that impossible depth, turned history into something you could touch, something you could see. The battle damage preserved exactly as it happened that October morning. So what does a ship look like after it charges a fleet 40 times its size? And what took 77 years to finally reach her? The USS Johnston wasn't built for what she ended up doing. She was a Fletcher-class destroyer, 2,000 tons, 376 feet long. Fast, 35 knots if you pushed her hard. Maneuverable, armed with 5-inch guns and torpedoes that could ruin a cruiser's day, but thin-skinned. That's the part nobody mentions. The hull plating on a Fletcher class was designed to keep water out, not shells. Definitely not the 14-inch rounds a Japanese battleship could throw from 15 miles away. Johnston was a knife in a gunfight. Her commander was Ernest Evans, Cherokee and Creek on his father's side, born in Pawnee, Oklahoma in 1908, raised in Muskogee, Annapolis graduate, 36 years old when he took command. At Johnston's commissioning ceremony in 1943, Evans said something to his crew that would have sounded like bravado from anyone else. From him, the men said it sounded like a warning. This is going to be a fighting ship. I intend to go in harm's way. Anyone who doesn't want to go along had better get off right now. Nobody got off. 13 months later, on October 25th, 1944, Johnston was part of Taffy 3, a small task unit babysitting 6 slow escort carriers during the invasion of Leyte. Their job was simple: protect the carriers, stay out of trouble. That morning started quiet. The invasion was underway. American troops were landing on Philippine beaches. The Japanese fleet was supposed to be scattered, reeling from earlier losses. Supposed to be. At 6:45, a lookout spotted masts on the horizon. Not American masts, Japanese. Within minutes, the identification came through. Battleships, heavy cruisers, the entire center force of the Imperial Japanese Navy. 23 ships, including the Yamato, 72,000 tons, the largest battleship ever built. Taffy 3 had 6 escort carriers and a handful of destroyers. The math wasn't close. The American plan had assumed this force was neutralized. Admiral Halsey had taken the main battle fleet north, chasing Japanese carriers that turned out to be decoys. San Bernardino Strait was supposed to be guarded. It wasn't. Someone had miscalculated. And now nothing stood between the most powerful Japanese surface fleet still afloat and the vulnerable transport supporting the invasion. Nothing except Taffy 3. Nothing except Johnston. Evans didn't wait for orders. He turned directly toward the enemy fleet. Full speed. All guns firing. A 2,000-ton destroyer charging a 72,000-ton battleship. The official record documents exactly what happened next. 2.5 hours of sustained combat, torpedo runs against cruisers, gun duels with battleships, a ship that refused to quit even after being crippled. But reading about it in Navy archives is one thing. Seeing the physical evidence on the ocean floor 77 years later is something else entirely. What Johnston did that morning wasn't brave. Brave is what you call it afterward, when you're writing medal citations. In the moment, it was mathematically absurd. A destroyer charging a battleship is like a house cat attacking a grizzly. The cat might scratch, but the outcome isn't in doubt. Except at Samar, the grizzly hesitated. Admiral Kurita had every advantage: speed, firepower, armor, numbers. His ships had sailed all night through San Bernardino Strait, expecting to find the American battle fleet. Instead, he found escort carriers. Kurita should have known immediately what he was looking at. Jeep carriers are small, slow, lightly armed. They look nothing like fleet carriers. But Kurita hesitated. For critical minutes, he believed he'd stumbled onto the main American force. He ordered general attack. every ship acting independently. Exactly the wrong order. Johnston drove through shell splashes and smoke, closing on the heavy cruiser Kumano. At 10,000 yards, she launched a full spread, 10 torpedoes. At least one hit. Kumano's bow was blown clean off. A heavy cruiser knocked out of the fight by a destroyer. But Johnston had also drawn attention. The Yamato turned toward this small, annoying ship. Her 18-inch guns could throw shells weighing 3,200 pounds. Johnston's entire torpedo load weighed less than Yamato could fire in one salvo. Evans turned toward Yamato anyway, making smoke, zigzagging, firing 5-inch guns he knew would bounce off her armor. The point wasn't to sink Yamato. The point was buying time. At 0730, 3 14-inch shells found Johnston, then 3 6-inch shells. The aft engine room flooded. Speed dropped from 35 knots to 17. The aft gun mount was destroyed. The gyro compass and radar gone. Evans took shrapnel to the face and hands. 2 fingers torn off. He wrapped the wounds and stayed on the bridge. By any logic, the story should end here. Crippled ship, surrounded by enemies. No one would have questioned surrender. Johnston kept firing for another hour with hand-loaded ammunition, gunners aiming by eye. Survivors described a moment that became legend. As Johnston lay burning, a Japanese destroyer moved in to finish her. The crews could see each other. A Japanese officer stood on deck, watching Johnston die. He raised his hand. Some survivors say he saluted. At 0945, Evans ordered abandoned ship. He was last seen on the bridge, or possibly the fantail. No one's certain. His body was never recovered. 10 minutes later, Johnston rolled over and sank. 187 men died that day. Some went down with the ship. Others died in the water during the 2 days before rescue arrived. The Navy recorded it all. Every hit, every casualty, every moment of that impossible fight. Medal of Honor for Evans. The battle report filed. The survivors debriefed. But numbers on a page don't capture what a ship looks like after fighting a fleet. The archival record tells you what happened. The wreck shows you what it cost. The story could have ended in 1944. For decades, it effectively did. Johnston became a footnote, a name in history books, a medal citation. Then Paul Allen, Microsoft co-founder and history obsessive, started looking for lost ships. Allen died in October 2018, but the research program he'd funded continued. His vessel, the Petrel, kept searching. Johnston was different from the other wrecks they'd found, because Johnston wasn't supposed to be findable. The Philippine Trench drops to over 34,000 feet in places. Johnston sank near its edge, 20,000 feet or deeper, below where most submarine hulls would implode. Below where anyone had ever looked for a shipwreck. In October 2019, Petrel's sonar found an anomaly. The shape was right. The location matched the estimated sinking coordinates, but confirming it meant going down there, and Petrel's ROVs had depth limits. Then Victor Vescovo got involved. Vescovo was a different kind of billionaire, former Navy officer, explorer who'd already reached the bottom of all 5 oceans. His submersible limiting factor was rated to 36,000 feet. In March 2021, he went down 21,180 feet, deeper than Titanic, deeper than Bismarck. At that point, the deepest confirmed shipwreck ever surveyed. Pressure over 9,000 pounds per square inch, temperature just above freezing, no light, no current, just cold, crushing stillness. And then, in the submersible's lights, something emerged. Steel, a gun turret, a mast, and then the number, 557. The bow section was remarkably preserved. The pressure should have crushed it. Instead, Johnston's forward hull looked almost frozen in time. The 2 forward gun turrets were still there, barrels showing impact scars from Japanese shells. You could count the hits, see where the armor had been pierced. The bridge structure twisted but recognizable, the place where Evans stood when he gave the order to charge. Then the cameras panned aft. The stern section was separated. The entire rear third of the ship torn away, scattered across the seafloor in fragments. Exactly what you'd expect from a ship that took that kind of punishment. Battleship shells, cruiser fire, sustained hits for over 2 hours. The Japanese action reports documented it all. Which ships fired, how many salvos, where the hits landed. The wreck matched the records. Battle damage so severe it tore the ship apart as she sank into crushing pressure and darkness. The survey team documented everything. The gun turret still positioned as if ready to fire, the shrapnel scoring along the superstructure, the sections that had been ripped open by shells designed to penetrate battleship armor, and the stern, separated during the sinking, exactly as survivors had described. the ship breaking apart as she went down, systems failing, compartments flooding, the structure unable to withstand both the battle damage and the pressure of the descent. 187 men went down with Johnston. The ROV footage shows no human remains. The Navy asked the survey team to respect the site as a war grave, to document but not to disturb. The Navy declared the site protected. No salvage, no artifacts removed. For now, Johnston holds the record as one of the deepest shipwrecks ever found. Though in 2022, the USS Samuel B. Roberts, another Taffy 3 ship that fought and died that same morning, was discovered even deeper. The wreck tells the same story the survivors told, the same story the Navy recorded, the same story the Japanese confirmed in their own after-action reports. A destroyer that charged a fleet and somehow bought enough time for the carriers to escape. A ship that fought until there was nothing left to fight with. A crew that refused to quit, even when surrender would have been justified. The difference is, now we can see it, preserved at 21,000 feet in near-freezing darkness. Ernest Evans was born in Pawnee, Oklahoma in 1908 and grew up in Muskogee, Cherokee, and Creek on his father's side. He climbed the ranks through the Depression. By 1944, he'd been Navy for 13 years, respected, if not famous. After Samar, he became a legend. Legends don't comfort families who lost someone. Evans received the Medal of Honor posthumously, first Native American Navy recipient in World War II. The citation praised his conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity. It didn't mention his body was never found. Didn't mention his family had no grave to visit. For the Evans family, there was no closure. A medal in a box, a name on a memorial, letters from surviving crewmates describing how their commander had fought with his hands wrapped in bloody cloth, 2 fingers gone, refusing to leave the bridge. But Ernest himself, his body, his remains, was gone, somewhere in the Philippine Sea, in water too deep to reach, 77 years of not knowing exactly where. When the wreck was confirmed in 2021, some families found peace. The grandson of one crewman said seeing the whole number felt like finally knowing where my grandfather is. For 77 years, there'd been nothing. Now there was a location, coordinates, proof that Johnston was really there, preserved in the darkness. Others weren't satisfied. Some wanted artifacts, proper documentation, a permanent record beyond the ROV footage. Others thought even the footage was intrusive. They didn't want anyone, even virtually, near their loved one's grave. The Navy declared the site protected, international waters, but within Philippine economic zones. The U.S. claims ownership as a Navy vessel that was never decommissioned. The Philippines has historical interest. The battle was fought to liberate their country. So far, no serious disputes. The depth makes access practically impossible for anyone without a submersible rated for full ocean depth. But technology improves, capability changes. The official record says Johnston fought until she couldn't fight anymore. That's accurate. Evans and his crew charged into certain death and bought enough time for the carriers to escape. They fought a battle that shouldn't have been survivable and came closer to winning than anyone expected. The wreck confirms it. Every hit documented in the Japanese reports is visible on the hull. Every system failure the survivors described is there in the twisted metal, the separation of the stern, the mangled gun mounts, the shattered bridge. At 21,000 feet, the pressure is crushing. The temperature is freezing. There's no light, nothing but stillness, and the wreckage of a ship that fought harder than anyone thought possible. The official record says Johnston died fighting a fleet. The wreck says the same thing. There were other ships at Samar that morning. The USS Samuel B. Roberts, the Hull, the Gambier Bay. They all fought. They all paid the price. And one of them lies even deeper than Johnston. That story's next.